tell you, I worked for Motorola for 12 years. And I have to have source code.
Yeah, he's saying that, you know, if you are in a small company, why would you do that? I wish I had here some of my cartoons. There's a cartoon I did about 5 years, it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And it basically described an interaction between a developer and two developers, a third-party developer. And it was a real case, right? I was calling the guy and I said, you know, the software has a bug. And he was like, well, I don't write bugs. I was like, okay. What did you change? Well, I changed what you asked me last time. I was like, well, which files did you touch? I don't know. I just implemented the feature that you asked me to implement. I'm like, well, can you revert to the previous version so we can see if it's a hardware issue or a software issue? No, I don't keep, I only keep the latest version of my code. Why would I keep the previous versions? I couldn't help it. I laughed on the phone. He was not very happy at me, but... And then I asked him, so what is your method of source code control? And he said, well, why would I have source code control if I'm a single developer? So I told that story to my friend Steve Watts, and he said, you know what? Marital status should not have anything to do with good software accounting practices. So you can tell that to your boss now that the size of the company doesn't matter. There's still other people trickling in. And I don't have any cartoons on this one. I think I have one or two. If you want to see some of my cartoons, I have another presentation tomorrow. 3:30, same room. We can say it's deja vu. All over again. I'm not supposed to start there. You know I'm dying to start there. Anybody else wants to volunteer why they're not using source code control yet? No?
There's actually free ones out there too, so that's money's no excuse either.
Yeah, money should not be an excuse, exactly. There's Subversion is free, Mercurial is free, Git is free. Which one is what else is free? I think that's it, right? Well, Perforce up to 2 users is free. Kiln up to 2 users is free. Yeah, there's plenty of options out there. So any other reasons why you're not using the word? Why is it that we're not using source code control?
Just never implemented. No good reason.
No good reason. Okay, so you're able to answer all the questions that I just asked me? So you never write bugs?
Oh no, we're making mistakes. It's just not implemented.
The way I tell people to see source code control is an option of having a macro on them. You can go and do a big search of something that's going to be really weird, it's not going to work out, and then midway you decide, you know what, this was really not the path I should go. Have an easy way to revert back. That's I think the best way.
For me, I've never used it before, and setting it up and understanding the different merging 14 and doing all that, that was a little learning curve that I never.
So learning curve. If you're working by yourself, I recommend Subversion. It's a lot easier to get started. If you're going to be starting with a team, I recommend going with Mercurial. It's a little bit. The learning curve is a little bit more steep, but it works a lot better with teams.
You use it using Bitbucket and SourceTree.
Bitbucket and SourceTree. Are you using Git or are you using Mercurial?
Git.
So Git. Then this is a personal opinion. For me, it was a lot more complex. At least when I'm trying to get teams started, it's a lot easier to get with Mercurial or Subversion. But for those of you that are still on the fence, like I said, just go to delacorp.com and go to the products page, and we have a link there to our YouTube channel. We have some videos there on how to do Subversion and Mercurial and Git, and I can do other videos if people ask them. And that's where we're also going to be posting this presentation. So I think it's already 3:30, right? Okay, so you guys are ready for this? All right. English is my second language. I am super excited about presenting, so I'm going to be using the accent is going to come running all the way from Mexico to here. So hopefully you're going to be able to understand me, and if not, Chris will have to tell me to slow down. which he already knows that's not possible. So, okay, so my name is Fabiola de la Cueva. I worked for NI from 2000 to 2006. Then I left to get my master's in electrical engineering and medical devices. I thought I was a hardware engineer. As soon as I got there and people found out that I knew LabVIEW, I started doing projects. Next thing I knew, I already had a company. So I am a software engineer, actually, not a hardware engineer. I've been doing this since 2006. And the thing that so this is our team. There's Luis and I here in Austin and Chris in Europe. And you can learn more at developer.com. We focus on software architectural design and implementation, automated test strategy and process optimization, training people on best practices, hardware design, and test and data management. Our main type of customer that we work with is companies that have a small or large team of LabVIEW developers that have no idea about software engineering, right? They were mechanical engineers, physicists, chemists, that for some reason they started using LabVIEW, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, we're writing software. We probably should be doing some software engineering. And what we do is we help those teams find what's the process that best suits them. So I just listed several tools. I will go work with your team and figure out what works best for your team. What worked for team A not necessarily works for team B. And that's the main thing. We have done turnkey solutions, we have done integration, but the main thing that we do is help teams implement good software engineering practices. All right, why do I have a cow here? Remember I told you that the Spanish was going to come all the way? The title of the presentation has the word chaos in it. It took me 10 years to learn how to pronounce chaos. To me, in Spanish, is cows. So if you hear me say cows, I'm not referring to this one, I'm referring to the chaos that you guys are creating in your development, okay? So we got that out of the way, let's go. So what's reusable code? Reusable code, as I'm going to be talking about, is group of VIs, classes, libraries, tools, utilities, quick drop shortcuts, project templates, anything that you're using in multiple projects. Okay? So you guys were thinking that I was just going to talk about the 3 VIs that you find yourself copying over and over and over. No, there's a lot more to that. Especially, and this is true also, we have had situations where we work with a startup that they had a single developer, the LabVIEW developer had created the whole thing on their own. Now they have the funding from the venture capitalists. They have to hire 5 LabVIEW developers, and all of a sudden, the guy who knew it all realizes that he doesn't know how to work in a team, right? And they start creating tools to either help them understand the rest of the application for the rest of the team or how to work together. But basically, anything you find yourself creating multiple times or copying for new projects, or the new guy gets in and you say, here's a USB stick, you have to stick this VI on this directory, and if you put this in the project folder on LabVIEW, you will have this new menu that we're actually using. That type of stuff I'm talking about. There's another concept that I want you to start thinking about, and that's release code. So what I mean by release code is code that is needed by another part of your project that will be developed in parallel. So one of my customers, we do several modules, right? And what we have is about 7 developers working in parallel. For them, we develop the architecture, and we have different levels of proficiency. We want that while the developer A is working on the timing module, they're going to define the public API. They're going to define how those VIs are going to be used by the rest of the team. So the first release code is just going to be a bunch of VIs that do nothing, but that have the right inputs and outputs on their connectors, right? We build that into a package, or however you want to distribute your release code, and the rest of the team can continue to work. While the poor guy keeps finding bugs on their timing module, the other guys can continue creating their bugs on their own modules, right? They don't interfere between each other. Then when the timing module is able to keep running, all that person has to say is, new release code, release it to the rest of the team, and automatically sections of their code start working, right? Because they were relying on that VI. a concept that is very rare or difficult to get for the teams of non-software developers, right? We came again from electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, chemists, physicists. We didn't know things. What do you mean release code, right? But this is what I mean. It's things that you want to be able to have done and then develop in parallel. So imagine in your team, you can have now, Joe is working on that, Chris is working on the analysis, Alex is working on the data logging, I am working on the error handling, somebody else is working on the actual controls. And you can work in parallel. Now, how many of you, right now, your applications, you could do that? That your application is separated in modules enough that you could do that? Okay, yeah, that's what I expected. So the rest of you, your applications are so cohesive that you don't see how you can remove one part of it out, right? This is where I tell people when we go and do audits on code, is like, okay, look, if I have to run the entire production line to test the printer, right? There's something wrong here. We need to be able to design the code in modules so we can separate it and make each one of those modules testable, right? Okay, so this is code that might not be reused in multiple projects, but it needs to be controlled, and we need to know what version the rest of the team is using. The tools that you can use to manage release code, you can have BI Package Manager. It used to be very difficult to get our customers to agree to use BIPM because it's a third party. It ships with LabVIEW since what, 2013, 2012? Is anybody from JKI here? No, I guess I scared them. And then the other option is LabVIEW source distribution. You know, when you go to the build specifications to create executables, there's another specification there called distribution, source distribution. Who here has used that? Okay, are you guys still using it for distribution? Okay. You mean you can also put version numbers there, you can also create palettes. It does pretty much, BIPM actually uses the source distribution specifications behind the scenes. The other option is to use source code control. So if you're using source code control, you can create something that's called sub-repositories or development branches. Now, what I've seen from working with different sizes of teams, this works well if you have like a single department and they're not going to be having to share with other departments in the rest of the company. This might work well. This doesn't work well, for example, in my case, where I have multiple customers and I might be sharing my intellectual property with them. If I want to make it clear what release version of my code they're using, I'm not going to give them access to one of my repositories and then they use it as a sort of repository, right? In large companies, that also doesn't work well because you start stepping on toes of who owns what, and they start making changes to the repository and they go and mess your project. But if you have a small team and you all know who owns the source code and you're not going to be sharing it with anybody outside your team, this might work for you. And the last option I have there is packed project libraries. Who here has used packed project libraries?
But I hate.
You hate them. So I try packed project libraries. Again, the same issue is I go to companies, and sometimes even in the small teams, you have one is using LabVIEW 2014, the other one is using LabVIEW 2013, the other guy there is using LabVIEW 2012. Packed libraries are version specific. So if your team is all using the same LabVIEW version, and you are going to be not having many revisions, like what are some of the issues that you have with packed libraries?
As you said, it's only using a specific version of LabVIEw. So if we want to try to update LabVIEw, it suddenly doesn't work, so we have to go back to the source code to recompile.
Yeah, so he's saying one of the suffering is the version. That's exactly the same thing that I've seen, that people say, okay, we're going to do packed libraries, then they upgrade LabVIEW and they realize that the timing module that we were talking about was done 3 years ago. And if they didn't have to rebuild, right, they would be fine. They don't even want to go see what that guy had in there. It just works, not touch it, right? But now all of a sudden you have to go rebuild it and it might not work. So I'm going to be doing all the demos and everything using BIPM, and that's just basically because that's the tool that we use the most. I don't get any kickbacks by JKI, so And I'm going to be highlighting what are the things that are free and what are the things that you have to have the pro version. So the first thing is when you're creating your code, you normally just would do creating your code, right? I'm adding here other stuff that I presented in other presentations and that I recommend. One is to create your unit test before you actually create the code. That's saying, how am I going to validate and know that the code was created correctly, right? That meets requirements. Then you create the code. Then you come back and validate and verify that it was correctly. And then you build it and you finally release. These are the steps that I'm recommending you do even for the separate modules on your code, right? You might have already been doing for the entire monolithic thing that you have to run in order to print, to test the printer. But now I'm saying do that also for smaller parts of your code. And then find a way that you're going to notify your team of a new version. So, okay. So some of the advantages, the developers can work on modules in parallel. The API gets defined early on. Another thing that is a consequence of this, and I've been telling people that I think I'm going to present about this next, is improves the developer experience. You guys are probably really good at thinking about what the end user experience is, what happens when they press the buttons, what error messages they're going to get. But how many of you actually think on your friend Joe what is going to be his experience when he's dealing with your code? We don't think that, right? We're like, yeah, whatever. No, when you're creating the VI, if you think, and this is something that Chris, when I started working with Chris, we had to think about, right? I'm creating a VI that Chris is in the UK, so I'm going to go to bed, and he's going to pull my code, and he's going to have to work with my code. And I don't want him calling me at 3 in the morning, so I better leave it in a way where he can work with it, right? So if you start thinking about that, you're going to be defining your APIs early on. Go ahead. Commenting it, yeah. But the main thing is like actually thinking, when you start thinking how I'm going to test my code and how the others are going to be using it, you're defining your inputs and outputs early on. The other advantage is having to build a release version of code encourages testing of parts. If I know that in order to call something release of my modules, I need to test it before I give it to the other person, right? I'm going to be more encouraged to test than if I'm just building a section here, a section here, a section here of the spaghetti code, right? I don't know where the limit is. Circular dependencies are spotted early on. This is something that's specifically a problem with classes and libraries. A circular dependency is when you have library A, one of its VI calls something on library B, and then another VI on library B calls code from library A. So the reason the circular dependency gets determined or found early on is because you have to build the dependency before you build the calling code, right? And if you get to that situation where you cannot build one or the other, that means that you have a circular dependency. The way I recommend to fix that is you find what's the source code, the code that's in common, and you push that to be another dependency, right? So some of the predicaments that we're going to be talking about, separating source code from release code, managing versions, managing the release process, and I'm going to start with this particular video here. So what I'm going to be using on this one, let me see if I can see that. There we go. All right, so we have released, last week we released a toolkit called the Delacorte QMH. It extends on the NIQMH, and I'm going to be using the shipping examples from this toolkit. So what I'm doing there is I am looking for the shipping examples. I'm going to fundamentals, loops, yeah, structures and loops, and then there's the DQMH fundamentals example. And this has multiple modules there. We're going to see that that we have a module for a temperature chamber and some modules for the devices under test. And let's say this is a product that you already have. It's a project you already have. We have a tester there to verify that we can communicate with the temperature chamber. I'm modifying things on the tester, making sure that they work on the temperature chamber. And we decide as a team that I want to use this temperature chamber in other projects. I also have a module, a PQMH module in this case, for the device under test. Same thing, I have a tester, I can show that I have multiple devices under test. And I have two libraries that go with that. So I have the library for the temperature chamber and the library for the device under test. So we have identified this project is already done, we have finished the project, and now we're going to share those libraries with the rest of the project. So what I'm going to do is, in this particular case, we are saving the project, the library, with a different name. So I'm going to be removing it from my current project, creating a new folder, right? Because now this is going to be its own project. The temperature chamber is going to become its own project. The device under test is going to become its own project. Okay? And you're going to see, of course, because I have been saying that source code control is so important, that we are going to be creating two separate repositories. We're going to create a repository for the device under test and a repository for the temperature chamber. That way, we ensure that each project is handled as a small little product with its release cycle. All right. All right, so I'm building the other one. And let me pause this. Normally, doing this doesn't look well, so let's see. So what we're doing is, once we already have the, and you can see these videos, like I said, we're going to publish them later. Once you have them in their own repository, they're separated code, I have them on their unique repositories, now I'm in a position to release the code. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to VI Package Manager, and I'm going to the tool that actually lets me create packages, the package builder. And all I'm going to say is point the directory where the library is located at, and then define the palette and build the package. So I'm going to do a little bit of a cooking show here. And again, like I said, these videos are going to be available. So I am putting there all the product name.
That's the free version of the.
Yeah. Oh, everything here on this video is on the free version. And I'm creating the palette there. So if you can see, the palette has all the requests. That's my public API. This is what the other team members are going to have to call when they're doing their application, right? So it creates a palette, and then we're going to build a package. So, and going there, just defining all the stuff that we need to do. Let me go to 1 to 4. There we go. So once you build the package, you can install the package, and now it's going to be directly into the palettes. Now, how you're going to be managing that sharing of the package, that's what we're going to see in a little bit on the next slides. So there it is, it installs the package, and now we can say to show it on the palettes. How many of you are already using VI Package Manager to build packages? Okay, there's one. The rest of you, do you use it to install packages? Yeah? Okay. All right, so then I'm just showing there, now you can call the VIs. Now, one of the things that I didn't do here is I did not add a prefix. I did not rename the VIs, I just built the package as it was, and now I'm just able to continue creating my project. So let's go to the next slide. So, the second predicate, oh yes, I do have cartoons, I have forgotten. So, we make our code available via palettes. Right, great. Cool. QuickDraw finds it. You're able to find it on the palettes. And then this is something that I keep hearing. Yes, but I have to uninstall the code anytime I want to work on the source code. Does anybody have that issue when you're building packages? Yeah. So this doesn't happen all the time. It has to do with the structure of your code, especially if you're not using libraries or classes. You don't have the namespacing provided for you. So what happens is you go build the package, you install the package, you go open the source, and LabVIEW says, there's a VI with that name in memory already. Because especially if you install your VIs in VI library, they got loaded when LabVIEW opened. So one solution to that, or workaround, is to add renaming. Now this is one of the things when Chris and I started working together, Chris was like, oh, but that's in the pro version. No, you can rename files with the free version. So what you do is we're going to go to the same, well, here. And the other advantage too is if you don't add renaming, now there's not an easy way of knowing what source code versus release code. Because if you look at the name of the VI is the same, you have to actually open the VI, go to the properties, and figure out where it's saved. And this is an easy way for team members to start calling the source code directly instead of the release code. So by having the rename, I can now do Control-H and look at the name of the VI, that it is an installed package. Now, the Pro version does have the option of, what was I going to say, the prefixing. What is it that the Pro version has? The naming of the palettes. Yeah, changing the names of the palettes. That's something that you don't have on the free version. But on the free version, you can add the prefix and or postfix, if that's how you roll. I roll with prefixes. Another thing that you can do is add the prefix only to the library name, because the library is already going to be providing the namespacing, or to the class. Now, in the past, I have issues when you start having many classes that relate together, so we have just gone to renaming the whole thing, and that way we don't go on picking and choosing. But with classes, that becomes a little bit more of an issue, because if you have overrides, they have to have exactly the same name, right? So in that case, you definitely just want to name the class. Any questions so far?
Is that a manual process with just renaming a class? Because I think it automatically renames the
Yeah, no, so if you go to the, when I was showing that on the video, I went to the, let me see if I can do the, going back, the renaming. You go to the folder and then you just say to apply the same things that the parent has to everyone else on the bottom. But there's an option to say, no, I don't want to apply the same setting to all the folders. So you just say, don't do anything, and then you just go specifically to each class and just tell it to check the prefix.
You put your classes, you put all the methods of the class in folder.
Yeah, the way our code normally gets a structure is all the class and its methods are saved in the same folder. And normally we actually have a flat structure there. There's no subfolders on disk. Anything that you want to do to organize the structure of your code is done on the project. So that makes it a lot easier that when you go to the IPM, you just tell it not to put prefixes to anything, and then you go and override that just the class has the prefix. But it is at that point, it is a manual thing when you go change it. All right. If you were using build distributions, source code distribution on the build specification, you can also add prefixes there. So that's something that is just part of LabVIEW. All right. Okay. So what are the advantages of renaming your code? Differentiate between source code on release code and release code. You have a quick confirmation that the release code is in use. And then, like I said, the prefixes can be added via the VIPM or the source distribution. If you want to do this with having branches, you really cannot do that, because if you have the repository, you cannot really change the name of the VIs, right? Okay. Okay. All right. So in this one, what we're doing is we're going to be doing is we're going to go back to the VI package manager, and this is where we're going to be adding the prefix. So what I'm going to do here is I'm setting that setting there that I'm putting here. That's where I enable the prefix. Now in this particular case, I put it on the top level folder, and that will apply to the entire contents of the package. So what I was saying is, don't check it there. Go to the LD class and LD leaves individually and add it there. All right? So in this case, I'm just adding it blindly to all of it, and then just build the package. But that's all you have to do. Now, what's one of the problems with this? If you have a large project, like I was just finding out, and you decide to do this, you were not doing this, now you're going to do this. What's going to happen when you build your package and it has a prefix? When you go and try to replace the code, you're going to be missing your VIs. There was a presentation that Becky Linton did last year at NIWeek, and they did a code that goes and traverses your existing code and replaces source code with release code by you giving it the prefix. The limitation with that tool is that it doesn't support classes at the moment. So it works really well if you have used VIs. So that's something that that you can check. Okay, so the other disadvantage, you can result in a long chain of prefixes when working with classes. That's my full name. When I became a US citizen and they said, you want to change your name? Yes, please remove the Bárcena because it's already too long. My husband makes fun of me and says that I should probably have already probably remove everything and just leave the de or la. But anyway. So if you do that with code, and you add the prefix to the class, and then the prefix to every method, or the prefix to the library and every VI, you can end up with something really large. So it's up to your company to decide, or your team, what that prefix is going to be. Right? In our case, we're releasing codes in the LabVIEW Tools network. We decided that we wanted to do the branding, so we did Delacorp _ leave _ DQMH. I'm sorry. When we realized that this was not a good idea, we had already packaged and released the code. So the option is what we said earlier, rename the class only, and you might have to change your style guidelines. The other thing to keep in mind too is if you are used to doing things like dynamically loading VIs, you might have hard-coded the name somewhere on your code. So now you have to go find all the places where you're loading VIs dynamically and make sure that they have the prefix as well. Now, if this becomes a nightmare, that's because you have other style issues going on there. You shouldn't have things hard-coded in different corners of your code that you don't know how to find. But that's another issue. All right, the other thing too is you lost class mutation history. This is something that LabVIEW does behind the scenes for you. For most of you, it's not going to be important. But if you are relying on the version or the mutation history of your class for figuring out the class version and reading different versions of your class, these might interfere with this. All right. Number 3, other predicament we have here. So the only way I have to check what version I am using is via VIPM. So if you decide, okay, I went to the presentation Fabiola did, we're going to be using packages, we're going to release our code that way. Now the only way I have to know where the version is open VI Package Manager and look at the version. Is there another way?
Is it possible in the implementation to have 2 versions? For example, if I have 2 different projects, and then one project A, I will be using version 1 and B version 2. Is that possible?
Yeah, it is possible. The question is, if I have project A and project B, and project A uses version 1 and project B uses version 2, you can have both installed on your machine. One of the nice things about VI Package Manager is you just go to VI Package Manager, right-click, and tell it what version you want to install. You wouldn't be able to have both projects open at the same time because only one of them is going to be installed. But yes, you can have them. And I'm going to show you later on another thing that we use. So one suggestion would be to add the version number and to the description of every VI of the release code. Well, yeah, our friend there is saying, yeah, but then at that point, every time I have to do this, to do a release, I have to do a commit that changes every single VI in my code. What's the use for that? Right? Because just adding the version is really easy. You just use a script tool that goes and finds the description of the VIs and you add it there. Well, this is one where if you have, like I said, you can create the scripting. VIPM Pro has an option to add author, VI version, and copyright, any other description you want to add. If you do that, it adds it after the VIs have been prepared for packaging and right before they get packaged. So that does not affect the source. That's not going to cause a change when you commit your code. Make sense? All right. And I have a demo of that as well.
What about using a version suffix in your rename?
The problem with using a version suffix in your rename is that the nightmare that we talked about earlier about your calling code needing to change because it's going to be calling the VI, that's not going to be a nice developer experience. Your friends are not going to like you. No. So it's in this section, and again, excuse me for the bad quality of the videos. I promise the ones on YouTube are not this bad. But in the Pro version, this is not on the free version. In the Pro version, they have a little field there, and you can add the link tags, and it will grab the tags from the other fields on the form. So if you want to put author name, if you want to put copyright, it does it automatically. And an example of that, if you download our DQMH, you will see that all our, when you do Ctrl-H, all of them are going to have that information. So after you build the package and you install it, you can see that description is at the bottom of the description of every VI.
What? So you said that doesn't go into the VI itself?
It goes into the VI itself, but the release VI. It doesn't go into the source code.
Oh, okay.
So if you open the source code, if you go to the repository where you were working, and you look at the VI and do Ctrl-H, there's going to be nothing there. When you go to the build package that has a prefix and you do Ctrl-H, it's going to have at the bottom of the description. So when you have your junior developer that comes in and says, oh, this is not working, and you go and do a Ctrl-H, it's like, because you're using source code, you're not using version. Or if they tell you, you know, I'm having issues, and you ask them what version they're using, they don't have to go all the way to the IPM to see what version they're using. They just do Ctrl-H, and they can tell you right away what version they're using. And then you can tell them, no, that's not the latest version. You have to go download the latest version, right?
How do you align the version in the version control system to the version you're adding here?
Who's asking the question? I just heard. Okay.
How do you align the version of the source code with the version you're adding in LabVIEW?
No, the version you use here, it goes major, minor, bug, and fix. So it's a totally different than whatever revision you have on source code.
Do you label in source control? Is that
How do you do it in source code control? If you're using SVN, maybe you create a tag that says this is a tag for this release, right? If you're using Mercuria, maybe you create a branch, or in Git, you could also create a branch. Or tagging, yeah. So that's how you would do it from the source code. And then we'll use the same number. In the smaller teams that I work with, the other thing they do too is on the commits, they just say, this is the source code that I build version X with. And that can be searched because it's on the comments.
But it's a manual process.
Yeah, it is a manual process. This is the source code control management and the VIPM are separated. Unfortunately, and at least with the current tools that we have in LabVIEW, there's not an easy way to do this method. And I guess that's also my selfish thing with doing this presentation is I want to show NI that there's things that could be improved, right? But in the meantime, these are the tools that we have, and this is how we're making them work. All right? And if any of you have a better solution, please do come talk, because that's how I earn my living, so I might be able to use that for other customers. Okay, the next predicament. This is the list we give new team members of all the things that they need to install. Poor intern comes in the first day, here's your list of everything you have to go download and install. Well, this is another thing for VIPM Pro. You can create a configuration file that includes all your favorite tools. Your OpenG, your Hidden Gems, the Delacorte KMH, of course. And then all they have to do is click apply. The VIPC, you have to have the Pro version to create it. But the others don't need the Pro version to apply it. Okay? So you can have in a single team, one person has the Pro license and the rest don't need to have it. Okay? So what that makes it for us when we are releasing code for customers is we can tell them here's your project and here's your VIPC file. Before you open the project, right-click on the VIPC file, click apply, and your computer's going to be ready. So in the case where you were saying project A and project B have different versions, each project would have its own VIPC file. You will right-click and say apply before you open the project, and automatically your station is all set for that project. It requires manual, right? There's no, again, this is one of the things that I wish it didn't, but you have to actually do it manually. I recommend including the VIPC on your project file kind of as a reminder for your developers. If they start seeing something weird, probably they have not applied the VIPC file, right? Would it be nice that the project would apply it automatically? Yes, it would be nice, but we don't have that. So keep track of release code. Keep a list of what release code and what versions are needed. So the VIPM Pro has a configuration file that lists all the packages needed and can contain the packages themselves. This is something that also not a lot of people know. When you create the VIPC file, you can store your packages by reference or by value. Right? You can right-click and say, by default, it stores all the packages. But you can right-click on the package and say, do not store it. And at that point, it only keeps the name and the version. So if you're working in a company that has their own repository, you don't need to include the packages, right? or if you have another method to keep the packages. What are the advantages of this? If you don't include the packages on the VIPC file, the footprint of the VIPC is going to be a lot smaller, right? What's the disadvantage? If I am in the middle of the desert testing some code, and it is my reference, and I try to apply, and I have no connection to the internet, I have no code, right? So it is going to be, again, specific to each team, and depending on what is it that you're doing, if it makes sense to have them by name or by value. And then another thing that I really, really like that they added about, I think, a year or 2 years ago, you can convert IDNet drivers into packages. Yeah, do I hear music? Right, what happens when we go to large companies, and Chris has a good example of that, where he got to a company and there were like 10 versions of the same power supply driver that developers have been downloading from IDNet, doing the plug and play, going directly into instrument library and making changes to those BIs. And the code would only work on Joe's computer, and when you would take it to Brian's computer, it would not work. And it was because they were changing the code to make it work. They were changes on the drivers. So we understand that sometimes the drivers that you download don't do exactly what you wanted them to do. That's okay. Well, create a copy of them and make them a package. Add them to the PIPC file. So now if you have a line, a production line, and they have different instruments there, you can include them all on your VIPC file and have them be part of the driver. So what I'm going to do there is, which one am I doing there? I'm creating the VIPC file there. I am looking for OpenG. In this case, I do like the application library from OpenG. I am adding it to the VIPC file. And then I'm going to look for the Delacroix QMH, of course, and I'm going to add that as well. But basically what I'm doing is finding on VI Package Manager where the package is located at. So I already built it, I installed it, I right-click on it, and I say send it to the configuration file. And then this is where I'm right-clicking on each one of them and deciding whether I want to store them on the package or not. So if they have the icon there, that means that I'm storing the entire package there. If it's not there, I'm just referencing to it.
Is the user library can be included?
Yeah, user libraries can be included too. You decide when you're building your package, you decide where you want to install it. By default, it installs everything on VI library, but nothing prevents you from installing user library or even desktop my documents if you want it, right? That's probably not a good idea, but you can do it. Okay. So this one, when I was doing the dry run of this presentation, some people didn't know about the storing the files. So how many people here are using VIPC files already? All right, did you know about the store? No store? Okay. So this is a good news, right? It's gonna make your submissions, the repository sometimes start getting too bloated because the VIPC file keeps changing. So now you don't need to worry about that. And again, like I said, in order to apply it, you don't need to have a professional version.
What about external third-party drivers?
So the things that we don't have on this solution, and let me just let the video play so you can see. On this one, I'm going to download from the IDNet and convert it into a package. Third-party drivers, if it's VIs.
Yeah, I mean, say it's like a mouse driver, but your system has to be configured exactly a certain way.
So mouse drivers, DACMX, like if you have to have a specific version of DACMX, if you have a DLL, unfortunately those you still have to figure out how you're going to be managing them. The way, and the first time I heard this, I was kind of like, are you crazy? Was to add the drivers to your repository. So you create on your Subversion repository or Mercurial repository or your Git repository, you create a folder called dependencies, and you put all your drivers there. Now, the reason I was like, the first time my reaction was like, that sounds crazy, was because why would you put all these large binary files there that are just going to blow your repository? Yeah, but they're not going to be changing. And the nice thing about that is if I go to a separate machine and I clone or I pull or I update or whatever your favorite source code control method is, you're going to get everything you need to run that project.
What about using the Microsoft Wake toolkit?
Microsoft, what?
Windows Automated Installation Kit. They have the tools to where if you have all this other stuff that has to configure the system a certain way that has nothing to do with your code, they have the tools to build that.
I have no idea about that. We should probably take a note about that. So Microsoft Auto what?
It's the Windows Automated Installation Kit.
Windows Automated Installation Kit. Okay, mental note.
There's a bunch of these tools. You can also use NUGET packages.
NuGet packages. Okay. So yeah, that's a good idea. But this little feature here, the IDNet, for large companies that have 10 different oscilloscopes, 50 different power supplies, and they have all made modifications to their instruments, now we can have them in source code. And we know they're bringing everything, because what that does is takes the plug and play installation, makes a copy, creates your own repository, and now you can build, and it even also creates the build specification for the package. So all you have to do is now make that modification that Joe had done on his computer, put it there, put it in the release notes, and now everybody has that modification. Right? Now this one, yes, to create the IDNet conversion, you need to have Pro, but then to distribute it, the rest of the team can have free. Any questions about this?
Is all this still focused just basically on distributing amongst the developers?
Yeah, this is releasing the code, or either release code or reusable code within your team.
Right.
Yeah.
Not exporting executables to the.
No, we're not getting on executables. No, this is just we're in the middle of development of the project, and how is it that we manage it as a team. Any other questions?
This is just a general question. You promoted the VI package manager and a Git or material or a source control. If you're already in source control and you've never used VI package manager, do you recommend using both or just one?
Well, actually, this is combination, and I apologize for it because the videos are not showing really well. But if you go back and look at the videos, you'll see that the source code to build the packages are in a repository. So I'm using both the source code control and the IPM. So there's a difference here. I know the IPM has versions, but I'm using source code control for versioning and VIPM for marking something as this is released.
Okay, so VIPM is better than using LabVIEW and just avoiding VIPM altogether?
No, you're still using LabVIEW. Like your libraries are, your source code is still a library or a class, or why did you go away? Okay. Yeah, so your source code is still a library, it's still a class, it's still how you've been using it. Right. The only thing you're doing here is you're facilitating, distributing this code among the people on your team.
But your source control system can already distribute it.
Yeah, but you cannot mark as release. As what he was saying, Project A is using version 1.1, Project B is using version 2.3. On the example that I was giving about the timer, maybe Joe has finished the implementation of functions A, B, and C, but he hasn't had a chance of doing function D, right? And that would mess with Rob. Rob really needs version D, and he should not use that until the version D is implemented. So he stays with version 0.001, while the rest of the team keeps moving. The version D gets implemented. Rob, finally you can work, right? We tell him now version 1.3 you can work on that. It also helps you with people that should not upgrade. If you have an old project, right, and they were using version 1.1, and 10 years later, you have to maintain that project, and you're already in version 10, and you realize that if you upgrade to version 10, you're going to mess it up. You just leave it. Does that make sense?
No. The big idea is that it's the formal release step for reusable code. And if you're renaming the files, it's impossible to use non-release.
Yeah. So from SpaceX, just so it's the big idea is you are differentiating release code from code in development. And because you're renaming that release code, because you're packaging in a certain way that it's a deliverable, you're making sure that it's clear this has been vetted, right? This has been tested, this has been approved. Now, what's the first reaction that I get from people, right, from teams? but it was so easy to just, I just need to change this constant and then it's gonna work, and now you have to make me go to the source code, change the constant there, build again. I hate you, Fabiola, why are you, no. But yes, the reason is that if you have 3 or 4 of those little changes and nobody documents them, and they start building up, you get to the situation, we have this customer that they had a proven proof of concept 3 months ago, and they're not able to reproduce it because it only worked on Joe's machine. And we don't know what Joe did. And Joe is gone. And they're using source code control, but it's not there. Okay? So, okay. So I lost my...
But you have to do this now.
I need to... On the projector? Oh, okay. All right, so the next predicament, and thank you for the segue, because that's actually the next question, is how to manage all those release modules. And I guess you're going to have to believe me, but there's my little cartoon guy.
It's HDMI.
All right, anyway, but there's, now that you have all these modules, so how do you manage now, right? Because now I have all this release code, how am I going to share it with the rest of the team? So the options that we have seen is some people use an FTP site, right? They say, okay, either an FTP site or a map drive in the company, and they say, we're going to distribute all the reusable code or all the release code is going to be in these FTP sites, right? Try it again. See, I don't like Macs. I don't like computers, actually. It's not release code, yeah. Okay. Escape. All right, let me start from turn slide. Ah, there you go. No, it's not showing? It is there. Don't worry about it. It's the last slide. So, so the options are FTP, map drive, Dropbox, or any other cloud sharing service, a source code control repository. That's another one that people are like, what? Why would you use that as source code control? Again, your team is already using source code, right? So you can just create a new repository that's called release code that has all the folder structure, and yet you're kind of not really using it for what it was meant to, but they all have access to it, and you can have the versions there.
Yeah, but one thing you pointed out earlier that may be overlooked is if you want to revert your packages that you've already installed, you don't have to go back to source code control, you go directly into that.
Yeah, you do that. If you want to revert back to previous versions, you do that directly with IPM. Yeah, this is just kind of like now how do we distribute our code. The other option is VIPM repository. That's, again, the issue with that one is that the entire team needs to have VIPM Pro. And up till now, I had shown you options where you only needed 1 license of Pro. So there are different options. Again, it's going to depend on what works best for your team. But the main thing is realizing what is going to be the process for releasing code, and how are you going to notify your team when a new version is there, right? What's going to be that process? And so the other, I think that's it. Another announcement is tomorrow at this time, I'm going to be presenting on curing cancer and using a modular approach to ensure the safe and repeatable production of medicine. And we're going to be talking about, my customer is going to be here, who actually needed the project, so that's going to be an interesting role play. Either it's going to go great, or I'm going to be crying at the end. But we're going to talk about designing his application with this approach. How do you separate the different modules, even though he was a single developer? But we did that to make his application more testable. And then Thursday, Chris is going to be presenting Don't Panic, a LabVIEW developer's guide to test that. And that's going to be at 2 p.m. on Thursday. The examples that I show here, the videos, are going to be on our website. I use the shipping examples from the DQMH. The DQMH is a toolkit that is free that Delacorp launched last week. And the other place that you can see some of our videos is bit.ly Delacorp QMH. But if you go to delacorp.com, you'll find it.
All the videos that we go back.
Yeah. Any questions, comments, complaints? If you want your money back, I'm not the person. I hope you learned something and that it was worth your time to be here an hour with me. Thank you. This was the last slide. No, I changed from Adele to Mac because my Dell was giving me problems.